All set? Good afternoon. I want to thank the United Nations for hosting today's events and putting the challenge of gender equality front and center on the international agenda. I'm especially pleased to have so many leaders here from the private sector standing shoulder to shoulder with advocates who've worked tirelessly for equality for decades. 20 years ago, this was a lonelier struggle. Today, we mark the progress that has been made in the 2 decades since the international community gathered in Beijing and declared with one voice that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights. And because of advances in health, education, and legal protections, we can say that there has never been a better time in history to be born female. Yet, as the comprehensive new report published by the Clinton Foundation and the Gates Foundation this week makes clear, despite all this progress, when it comes to the full participation of women and girls, we're just not there yet. As I said today, this remains the great unfinished business of the 21st century. And my passion for this fight burns as brightly today as it did 20 years ago. I want to comment on a matter in the news today regarding Iran. The President and his team are in the midst of intense negotiations. Their goal is a diplomatic solution that would close off Iran's pathways to a nuclear bomb and give us unprecedented access and insight into Iran's nuclear program. Now, reasonable people can disagree about what exactly it will take to accomplish this objective, and we all must judge any final agreement on its merits. But the recent letter from Republican senators was out of step with the best traditions of American leadership, and one has to ask, what was the purpose of this letter? There appear to be 2 logical answers. Either these senators were trying to be helpful to the Iranians or harmful to the commander-in-chief in the midst of high-stakes international diplomacy. Either answer does discredit to the letter's signatories. Now, I would be pleased to talk more about this important matter, but I know there have been questions about my email, so I want to address that directly, and then I will take a few questions from you. There are 4 things I want the public to know. First, when I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of 2. Looking back, it would have been better if I'd simply used a second email account and carried a second phone, but at the time, this didn't seem like an issue. Second, the vast majority of my work emails went to government employees at their government addresses, which meant they were captured and preserved immediately on the system at the State Department. Third, after I left office, the State Department asked former secretaries of state for our assistance in providing copies of work-related emails from our personal accounts. I responded right away and provided all my emails that could possibly be work-related, which totaled roughly 55,000 printed pages, even though I knew that the State Department already had the vast majority of them. We went through a thorough process to identify all of my work-related emails and deliver them to the State Department. At the end, I chose not to keep my private personal emails about planning Chelsea's wedding or my mother's funeral arrangements, condolence notes to friends, as well as yoga routines, family vacations, the other things you typically find in inboxes. No one wants their personal emails made public, and I think most people understand that and respect that privacy. Fourth, I took the unprecedented step of asking that the State Department make all my work-related emails public for everyone to see. I am very proud of the work that I and my colleagues and our public servants at the Department did during my 4 years as Secretary of State. And I look forward to people being able to see that for themselves. Again, looking back, it would have been better for me to use 2 separate phones and 2 email accounts. I thought using one device would be simpler, and obviously it hasn't worked out that way. Now I'm happy to take a few questions.
Secretary Clinton,
Just a minute. No, I mean, Nick is calling on people.
Sorry. Madam Secretary, Kahraman Halis Salik with Turkish television. On behalf of the UN Correspondents Association, thank you very much for your remarks, and it's wonderful to see you here again. Madam Secretary, why did you opt out not using 2 devices at the time? Obviously, if this didn't come out, you wouldn't probably wouldn't become an issue. And my second follow-up question is, if you were a man today, would all this fuss being made be made? Thank you.
Well, I will leave that to others to answer. But as I said, I saw it as a matter of convenience, and it was allowed. Others had done it, according to the State Department, which recently said Secretary Kerry was the first Secretary of State to rely primarily on a state.gov email account. And when I got there, I wanted to just use one device for both personal and work emails instead of 2. It was allowed, and as I said, it was for convenience, and it was my practice to communicate with State Department and other government officials on their .gov accounts. So those emails would be automatically saved in the State Department system to meet record-keeping requirements, and that indeed is what happened. And I heard just a little while ago the State Department announced they would begin to post some of my emails, which I'm very glad to hear because I want it all out there.
Madam Secretary, can you...
Andrea? Andrea, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Can you explain how you decided which of the personal emails to get rid of, how you got rid of them and when, and how you'll respond to questions about you being the arbiter of what you release? And secondly, could you answer the questions that have been raised about foreign contributions from Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia that abuse women or permit violence against women to the Family Foundation, and whether that disturbs you as you are rightly celebrating 20 years of leadership on this issue?
Well, those are 2 very different questions. Let me see if I can take them in order. And I'll give you some of the background. In going through the emails, there were over 60,000 in total sent and received. About half were work-related and went to the State Department, and about half were personal that were not in any way related to my work. I had no reason to save them, but that was my decision because the federal guidelines are clear and the State Department request was clear. For any government employee, it is that government employee's responsibility to determine what's personal and what's work-related. I am very confident of the process that we conducted and the emails that were produced. And I feel like once the American public begins to see the emails, they will have an unprecedented insight into a high government officials' daily communications, which I think will be quite interesting. And with respect to the foundation, I am very proud of the work the foundation does. I'm very proud of the hundreds of thousands of people who support the work of the foundation and the results that have been achieved for people here at home and around the world. I think that we are very clear about where we stand, certainly where I stand on all of these issues. There can't be any mistake about my passion concerning women's rights here at home and around the world. So I think that people who want to support the foundation know full well what it is we stand for and what we're working on.
Madam Secretary.
Hi, right here.
Secretary Clinton.
She's sort of squashed, so we got to.
Hi, Secretary. I was wondering if you think that you made a mistake in either in exclusively using your private email or in the response to the controversy around it, and if so, what have you learned from that?
Well, I have to tell you that, as I said in my remarks, looking back, it would have been probably smarter to have used two devices, but I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department. And I have to add, even if I'd had two devices, which is obviously permitted, many people do that, you would still have to put the responsibility where it belongs, which is on the official. So I did it for convenience, and I now, looking back, think that it might have been smarter to have those two devices from the very beginning.
Secretary Clinton. Secretary Clinton.
Yeah.
Did you or any of your aides delete any government-related emails from your personal account? And what lengths are you willing to go to prove that you didn't? Some people, including supporters of yours, have suggested having an independent arbiter look at your server, for instance.
We did not. In fact, my direction to conduct the thorough investigation was to err on the side of providing anything that could be possibly viewed as work-related. That doesn't mean they will be by the State Department once the State Department goes through them, but out of an abundance of caution and care, we wanted to send that message unequivocally. That is the responsibility of the individual, and I have fulfilled that responsibility, and I have no doubt that we've done exactly what we should have done. When the search was conducted, we were asking that any email be identified and preserved that could potentially be federal records. And that's exactly what we did, and we went, as I said, beyond that. And the process produced over 30,000, work emails. And I think that we have more than met the request from the State Department. The server contains personal communications from my husband and me, and I believe I have met all of my responsibilities, and the server will remain private. And I think that the State Department